Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner. For those of you new to the channel, of which I know there's many of you new subscribers, and I appreciate the fact that you've signed up for this, I'm a constitutional attorney. I'm a gun owner. I'm a member of the United States Supreme Court Bar. And in 2021, I am proud to say my scholarship was used by a federal judge in California to strike down as unconstitutional under the Second Amendment the California ban on AR-15s. Today here at the Four Boxes Diner, I want to talk about two terrible mistakes that the Ukrainian people made in leading up to this Russian invasion and what we in the Second Amendment community can learn from it. The first critical mistake that the Ukrainian people made started in the year 2005. Remember, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. So when the Soviet Union collapsed and broke into a series of states, the Ukraine had a lot of weapons. Not only did they have, sort of so-called weapons of mass destruction or other critical weapons like this, they also had a lot of small arms and ammunition. They had AK-47s. They had ammunition to go in with those AK-47s. Tens of thousands of weapons they had. So what happened? How does a country that actually had massive amounts of armaments that could be used to protect itself somehow lose that capacity? Well, guess what? It's going to be a name that you've heard of. This is excellent reporting, by the way, by some people over at the National Review, NRO. I'm going to link to the articles from the NRO below, as well as an excellent piece from the Daily Mail in the United Kingdom. Now, these articles and their historical research that they report on teach us the following. In 2005, Barack Obama was a U.S. senator who wanted to run for president. We all know this, okay? And Barack Obama went to Ukraine and worked really hard to try to get federal money from the United States government to do what? That would be to disarm the Ukrainians by giving them money so they destroyed all their stockpiles. Or if they weren't destroying their stockpiles, they were selling them overseas. In fact, there's pretty strong evidence that a lot of the AK-47s and the ammunition that the Ukrainians had in their possession, they had it. They sold it, presumably so their government could make money. They sold this into various conflicts around the world. But they gave up those guns. They disarmed themselves. And why did they do this? Well, I think why they did it was stupid. That's my opinion. But I want to give you a quote from Barack Obama because he made a point. This is Barack Obama. And he made a point that he often makes to us in the Second Amendment community about why we should give up our guns, why we should disarm ourselves for the good of ourselves and America. Now, this is what Barack Obama said in 2005. It's going to sound familiar, okay? Quote, "We need to eliminate these stockpiles for the safety of the Ukrainian people and people around the world." I want to quote that again. This is Barack Obama in 2005 about the Ukrainians. Quote, "We need to eliminate these stockpiles for the safety of the Ukrainian people." Again, it's like you need to give up your AR-15 for the good of yourselves and your family and your community. Because why? Apparently the government will take care of us, which we know it will never occur. And I think this is an important lesson because the same lesson, the same argument that Barack Obama was making to disarm the Ukrainians, which the Ukrainians then did, guess what happened? There was no one there to save them when they got invaded. Now they're begging for guns, they're begging for ammunition, they're begging for defense support, but they had all of these weapons, they had them, and they gave them up at the urging of, among other people, Barack Obama. So the first lesson to the Second Amendment community from the Ukraine history is this. When someone says to you that we need to give up our guns and our Second Amendment rights to protect America, to protect ourselves, call BS on it because it's simply not true. Look at the Ukrainian story, and that's all the proof you need that what they're saying is total BS. The second major mistake I think the Ukrainian people made is failing to heed some of the guidance and history that was provided, believe it or not, in 2013 by two prominent Second Amendment historians here in the United States. One, Stephen Halbrook, and one, Joyce Lee Malcolm. You see, Stephen Halbrook and Joyce Lee Malcolm are two of the most important Second Amendment historians and scholars in the United States, so much so that when the Supreme Court issues decisions on the Second Amendment, including in the most famous decision of them all, Heller versus the District of Columbia, the U.S. Supreme Court actually cites to the historical work of Stephen Halbrook and Joyce Lee Malcolm. Now, why is this important? It's really important because in 2013, okay, and you won't hear this anywhere else, but for this channel, which is why this channel exists, to give you information that you don't hear other places, okay? Stephen Halbrook and Joyce Lee Malcolm were asked to submit papers on the Second Amendment and its importance to American life. Both Professor Malcolm and Stephen Halbrook submitted articles to the Journal of Ukraine Law. Now, the Journal of Ukraine Law is really the most important constitutional law journal read by the elites, by the illegal elites, as best I can tell, in the Ukraine. Okay. And why is it that in 2013, legal elites that ran this publication wanted these articles on America's Second Amendment and what they got? And by the way, the articles that were submitted to the Ukraine Law Journal actually talk about the role of the Second Amendment in thwarting tyranny. It actually talks to some of the concerns and issues that we actually are seeing on the TV tonight as the Ukrainians are asking for weapons and armaments, ammunition, guns, and the like to defend themselves against the tyrannical invasion by Vladimir Putin's Russia. But what happens here? Now, here's the thing I want to drive home, and the mistake that I think the Ukrainian people made, or their government made, that we must learn about, and that is this. When a 5-year-old kid makes a mistake and does something stupid, we forgive that kid because he doesn't know better. He's only 5. She's only 5. She's a kid. But when that same mistake is made by, let's say, a 35-year-old adult with all their faculties, we have a much different perspective on that mistake. And we do not forgive so easily when a 35-year-old does something stupid. And why is that? It's because they know better. They know better than the 5-year-old. Now, to the extent the Ukrainians in the year 2005 and 2006, when they disarmed themselves at the urging of people like then Senator Barack Obama, they should have learned come 2013. Because in 2013, you had in one of the leading, if not the leading legal journal in the Ukraine, read by legal elites presumably, you had discussions of the importance of the right to keep and bear arms in a civilized society, written by two of the most important scholars on the topic, so important that they're, again, relied upon by the United States Supreme Court, okay, which is the role model for the world when it comes to courts. Relying on those, Joyce Lee Malcolm and Stephen Halbrook. The Ukrainian legal journal published these articles. People in the Ukraine were aware of these articles and these discussions of the Second Amendment in the Ukraine. And what did the Ukrainian people do? Well, as best I can tell, is they really, at the end of the day, did nothing to heed the lessons of history, the lessons of American history, and the lessons of American constitutional law, as articulated by Professor Malcolm and by Stephen Halbrook. And when you don't heed the lessons of history, and when you don't appreciate what the role of a right to keep and bear arms would be, whether in the United States or in the Ukraine or in any other civilized country, the results you get can be catastrophic. And unfortunately, today in the Ukraine, the results we see of an unarmed population just beginning now to arm themselves, in my view, really too late, okay? Too late. That is a terrible, catastrophic consequence. And remember, many people on my channel like to remind me, and I appreciate you reminding me in your comments, about a quote, a supposed quote by Admiral Yamamoto, the Japanese admiral of the Navy fleet in World War II, who says that invading, this may be an apocryphal quote, but it's still a good one, invading the United States would be impossible because behind every blade of grass would be a person, a man with a rifle. And I think that one has to ask ourselves if Vladimir Putin, looking at the Ukraine, reached the same conclusion as Admiral Yamamoto did in the 1940s, right? Would Vladimir Putin have still invaded if he knew that there was 43 million people armed to the teeth with civilian firearms, not just with the guns, but knew how to use them, had a culture of them that could have been developed, right? Since, among other times, the 2005 and Barack Obama basically started the disarmament process, or since 2013 at least, when articles were published in the Ukrainian Law Journal about the role of the Second Amendment in thwarting tyranny. Only history will allow us to guess. We'll never know, but I suspect that could have been a powerful deterrent effect of invading Russia. So let's wrap up. The lessons today from the Ukraine situation are many for the Second Amendment community. But the two that I think are arguably the most important is do not disarm yourselves when anti-gunners such as Barack Obama, and who was the vice president of Barack Obama when he was president? That would be Joe Biden, our current president. So when people try to disarm the United States and Americans in violation of the Second Amendment because we need their protection, don't believe it. It's not true. And history proves this point correctly. All of history, including today's history, unfortunately involving the Ukrainian people who are looking for guns and weapons and ammo now, as well as the ability to learn how to use them. And unfortunately, it's probably, or could be, too little, too late. Only history will tell. But the fact is, had they had these weapons ahead of time, they might never have been in the war in the first place, which would have been the best possible outcome, to not actually have to fight a war and win it for your freedom. Much better to avoid the war altogether. And second of all, I'm sympathetic to the Ukrainian people, but in 2013, we know there was discussions in major legal journals by two prominent Second Amendment historians about the importance of the right to keep and bear arms in a civilized society. And unfortunately, it appears that the Ukrainian people, or at least their government leaders, their political leaders, did not heed the advice of what I consider to be one of the most important people who's talked about the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms as preventing tyranny. And that is the former Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals judge in California, Alex Kaczynski, who described the Second Amendment's right to keep and bear arms as a doomsday provision. And it's such a great quote. I just want to sum up this video with what Judge Kaczynski said in a famous Second Amendment case. He said this, that the right to keep and bear arms is a doomsday provision, one designed for those exceptionally rare circumstances where all other rights have failed. Judge Kaczynski continued with this. However improbable these contingencies may seem today, facing them unprepared is a mistake a free people get to make only once. Okay, well, I hope you learned something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. And again, if you like what you heard, please subscribe. We really would appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon.
Orders up. Table 2A.